On 18th November 1942, a solitary forced landing on occupied Jersey delivered to German hands a near-intact Supermarine Spitfire Mk Vb, serial EN830. British squadron records logged the aircraft that morning on a sortie from RAF West Hampnet. German intake registers recorded its arrival at Erprobungsstelle Rechlin within weeks. The expectation held that such losses remained isolated incidents, mechanical failures without strategic consequence. The reality, preserved in Luftwaffe test files and Daimler-Benz factory ledgers, proved otherwise. German engineers installed a Daimler-Benz DB 605A engine, converted the electrical system to 24 volts, and flew comparative trials against the Messerschmitt Bf 109G. The test reports documented climb rates and service ceilings that challenged assumptions held by both sides. The turning point lies recorded in those charts. An enemy airframe, properly re-engineered, outperformed the German frontline fighter in measurable parameters. The file begins with rain on Jersey soil and ends with bomb craters at a Stuttgart test facility. The weather over the Channel Islands on the morning of 18th of November 1942 carried low cloud and scattered rain. Squadron records for No. 131, Squadron RAF Note, Spitfire, Mk Vb, EN830, coded NXX, assigned to a rhubarb sortie, offensive sweeps flown below weather toward occupied French coastal sectors. The pilot, Sous-Lieutenant Bernard Schiedhauer of the Free French Air Force, aged 23, had logged operational hours since mid-1942. His service file lists previous postings and flight time. The sortie brief survives in station records. The aircraft did not return to West Hampnet. German occupation forces on Jersey recorded the recovery of an intact Spitfire near Trinity Parish that afternoon. Local garrison reports, forwarded through administrative channels, noted minimal damage. The airframe rested upright in soft field soil, undercarriage intact, propeller blades bent from ground contact. Schiedhauer became a prisoner of war. The Luftwaffe technical staff on Jersey documented the serial number, markings and condition. Within days, transport arrangements moved the aircraft to the mainland. Allied operational planning in late 1942 accepted routine losses to mechanical failure, weather, and navigation error. Single aircraft incidents rarely merited strategic concern. Production figures for the Spitfire Mk Vb show 3,911 examples, built by Supermarine, Castle Bromwich, and Westland through 1943. One airframe represented a fraction of monthly output. Yet the intelligence value of an intact example far exceeded its production cost. German technical directives prioritized examination of enemy equipment to identify performance margins, structural methods, and systems integration. The capture on Jersey offered that opportunity. The aircraft carried the Rolls-Royce Merlin 45 engine, 8 303-inch Browning machine guns, standard radio equipment, and full instrumentation. German analysts could measure weight distribution, control forces, visibility arcs, and fuel capacity. More importantly, they could fly it. The file entry for 18th of November 1942 closes with a single notation: aircraft secured, transport authorized. The next documents originate from Erprobungsstelle Rechlin, the Luftwaffe's central test establishment near Lake Müritz in Mecklenburg. Schiedhauer's photograph from that period shows a young man in flight gear, collar turned against November cold. He would not return home. His path led through prisoner of war camps to Stalag Luft III, participation in the mass escape of March 1944, and execution by the Gestapo on 29th of March 1944. His name appears on the memorial plaque in Jersey, salt air and traffic passing, inscription listing dates without adjectives. The aircraft he flew survives only in ledgers and test charts. German intake procedures at Erprobungsstelle Rechlin followed standardized protocols. The facility handled evaluation of captured Allied aircraft, experimental German prototypes, and comparative performance trials. Staff annotations for EN830 describe initial inspection results. Airframe structurally sound, engine serviceable, systems complete. The Merlin 45 provided baseline data, but German planners sought direct comparison using equivalent power plants. A decision memo dated December 1942 authorized transfer of the Spitfire to the Daimler-Benz Flight Test Division at Sindelfingen and Echterdingen near Stuttgart. The proposal specified installation of a DB605A1 engine to enable controlled comparison with Bf-109G performance. Transport logs record rail carriage through occupied France into southern Germany. Security directives ensured the aircraft remained under guard throughout movement. At Sindelfingen, a Luftwaffe technical NCO accepted delivery. His log entry mentions icing on control surfaces and residual glycol odor from the Merlin's cooling system. The hangar smelled of oil, wet concrete, and cold metal. Winter light filtered through high windows onto the workshop floor. Mechanics in grey coveralls moved between benches and tooling stations, breath visible in unheated air. The institutional structure supporting this conversion reflected German organizational practice. Coordination between Rechlin test staff, RLM technical departments, and Daimler-Benz's corporate flight division. Work orders detailed every modification. Factory ledgers preserved engine serial numbers, part changes, and labor hours. This was not improvisation, it was methodology applied to captured material. The Luftwaffe's capacity to redirect an enemy aircraft into systematic evaluation demonstrated a logistics network functioning under stress but still coherent. The decision to convert EN830 rather than merely fly it with the original engine revealed priorities. German planners wanted quantitative comparison, not anecdotal impressions. Installing a DB605A eliminated engine variables and isolated airframe characteristics. The data would feed training syllabi, tactical doctrine, and design discussions. Knowledge moved through channels, from test pilots to staff analysts, from engineering reports to operational units. The next file entries originated from Daimler-Benz, detailing work schedules and component lists. An engineer noted that the Spitfire's fuselage lines showed careful aerodynamic refinement. Another commented on the wide track undercarriage and outward retracting landing gear, contrasting with the Bf-109's narrow stance and inward folding arrangement. These observations entered technical summaries alongside hard figures. By January 1943, the conversion neared completion. Factory photographers documented the aircraft in Luftwaffe markings, code CJ+Y painted on fuselage and wings. Ground crews prepared instrumentation for flight testing. The smell of fresh paint mixed with fuel vapor. Mechanics tightened cowling fasteners, checked control cable tensions, and verified electrical connections. Outside, frost coated the field. Inside, work continued under artificial light. Work orders dated January 1943 list modifications to EN830 in precise technical language. The Daimler-Benz DB 605A1 engine, serial number WKNR 007019990, replaced the Rolls-Royce Merlin 45. The German engine produced approximately 1,475 metric horsepower at takeoff power settings. Installation required fabrication of new engine mounts, reconfiguration of cooling systems, and adaptation of exhaust routing. The electrical system converted from 12-volt to 24-volt standard. A 3-meter diameter propeller from Bf-109G stocks replaced the original unit. Carburetor intake geometry borrowed from Bf 109 installation practice. Armament removal reduced weight significantly. The 8.303-inch Browning guns, ammunition boxes, feed mechanisms, and associated structure came out. Recorded weight without armament, 2,730 kilograms, 6,020 pounds, down from approximately 3,030 kilograms, 6,680 pounds in armed configuration. This weight reduction would influence subsequent performance measurements. Flugkapitän Willy Ellenrieder, a Daimler-Benz test pilot, conducted initial flights after conversion completion. His notes, preserved in company archives, emphasize handling qualities and pilot interface. Ground handling benefited from the wide landing gear. Visibility over the nose during taxi exceeded that of the Bf 109G. Engine starting procedures differed from Merlin practice, but control responses felt familiar once airborne. Ellenrieder described the cockpit environment in a post-flight report. Instrument layout logical, throttle and mixture controls well placed. Seat position offering good outward visibility. The DB605's direct fuel injection eliminated carburetor flooding during negative G maneuvers, a known limitation of the Merlin's float-type carburetor. Engine sound differed, the DB's distinctive exhaust note replacing the Merlin's higher-pitched tone. On rotation, Ellenrieder noted lighter stick forces than expected. Climb attitude required less forward pressure to maintain optimal angle. Winter air provided dense conditions. The engine responded crisply to throttle input. He felt warmth radiating from the engine bay through the firewall, a contrast to the cold slipstream. At altitude, control harmony impressed him. The aircraft felt, in his words, like a pilot's aircraft. Factory engineers monitored these flights from the ground. Instrumentation recorded engine parameters, manifold pressure, coolant temperature, oil pressure, fuel flow. Data loggers captured climb rate and altitude progression. Each flight generated charts for later analysis. The process followed standardized evaluation protocols. Systematic exploration of the flight envelope, one parameter at a time, building a comprehensive performance map. By March 1943, enough data existed to begin comparative assessments. The DB-powered Spitfire would fly alongside Bf 109G aircraft fitted with the same DB605A engine. German planners sought direct comparison. Same power plant, different airframes. The results would quantify aerodynamic and structural differences independent of engine performance. A rigger's maintenance log from this period mentions routine tasks: cowling panel adjustments, propeller balance checks, coolant system inspections. He writes of fuel fumes and cold hands in an unheated workshop. The aircraft transitioned from a captured enemy machine to a working tool, a platform for generating data. National markings mattered less than measurement accuracy. Test schedules between March and July 1943 structured flights to document climb performance, service ceiling, speed at altitude, and handling across the flight envelope. German test reports recorded climb rates near 21 meters per second, approximately 70 feet per second, in the converted Spitfire, acknowledging that these figures reflected the unarmed, lightened configuration. Service ceiling measurements exceeded 12,000 meters, approximately 39,370 feet, with some accounts referencing 12,700 meters, 41,666 feet under specific conditions. Comparative trials against Bf 109G aircraft equipped with the same DB605A engine revealed differences attributable to airframe design. The Spitfire's larger wing area, approximately 22.5 square meters, 242 square feet, produced lower wing loading. This translated into tighter turning radius at a given airspeed and altitude. The elliptical wing planform distributed lift efficiently, reducing induced drag in maneuvering flight. Test pilots noted differences in ground handling and visibility. The Spitfire's wide-track landing gear provided stability during takeoff and landing, particularly in crosswind conditions. Pilot visibility during ground operations exceeded that of the Bf-109, whose narrow gear and nose-high attitude limited forward view. In the air, the Spitfire's bubble canopy offered superior situational awareness. Data from these flights entered formal reports circulated to RLM. Technical offices, engineers prepared charts showing performance curves, altitude versus time, speed versus altitude, turn radius versus speed. These graphs, pinned in briefing rooms and training facilities, quietly altered the way Luftwaffe instructors discussed Spitfire capabilities. Previous assumptions about enemy fighter performance gave way to measured knowledge. The absence of armament in the test aircraft introduced a known limitation in data interpretation. German analysts understood that combat-weight Spitfires would show reduced performance, yet the core aerodynamic and handling characteristics remained valid. Trainee pilots could learn how the Spitfire turned, climbed, and responded to control inputs. Tactical recommendations adjusted accordingly. Avoid sustained turning engagements, use energy tactics, exploit climb rate where possible. Between sorties, ground crews performed routine maintenance. A flight line rigger recorded his tasks in a workshop log. Tightening cowling fasteners, checking propeller blade angles, inspecting cooling system integrity. He wrote of fuel fumes lingering in the hangar, cold metal under bare fingers, the sound of compressed air tools in adjacent bays. The aircraft required care like any other. Oil changes, filter replacements, inspections for stress cracks. It became part of the facility's operational rhythm. By midsummer 1943, the DB Spitfire had accumulated enough flight hours to establish reliability patterns. Maintenance intervals stabilized. Pilots requested the aircraft for demonstration flights and personal evaluation. Its handling qualities made it popular among test staff. One engineer's note described it as having a fast and racy look, contrasting favorably with the utilitarian angularity of contemporary German fighters. The data continued to accumulate. Each flight added points to the performance map. The machine transitioned from novelty to reference standard, a benchmark against which new German designs and modifications would be measured. German training doctrine incorporated captured aircraft evaluation through established programs. The Circus Rosarius demonstration units toured Luftwaffe bases with flyable Allied types, allowing German pilots to observe enemy aircraft in flight and understand their performance characteristics. Instructional materials prepared during 1943 cited comparative data from test programs like EN-830's evaluation. Pilot briefings included standardized handouts listing Spitfire specifications, wing area, weight, power loading, control surface areas. These sheets noted the aircraft's tendency to tighten turns under increased G-load, its effective climb rate at various altitudes, and visibility advantages from the cockpit. Instructors emphasized anticipation. Understanding what the enemy aircraft could do allowed better tactical planning. Operational units received these briefings before deployment or during rest periods behind the front. A young replacement pilot wrote home in late 1943, a single line in a letter. "We now study the English machine." The letter survives in family archives. He described classroom sessions where instructors used model aircraft to demonstrate turning relationships and energy management. After lectures came practical demonstrations, when available, Flights in or alongside captured types, training records from Luftwaffe fighter schools show small but measurable improvements in pilot confidence when engaging Spitfires after familiarization training. Debriefing reports referenced fewer instances of surprise at Spitfire maneuverability or climb performance. Pilots arrived at frontline units with realistic expectations rather than assumptions based on rumor or propaganda. The logistics of this knowledge transfer mattered as much as the knowledge itself. Printed materials required paper, ink, and distribution networks. Demonstration flights consumed fuel and maintenance hours. Instructors needed access to test data and enough time to prepare lessons. The system functioned because German military logistics, though strained, still supported structured training through 1943, yet numbers constrained outcomes. By late 1943, Allied air operations intensified across the Mediterranean and in preparation for operations in northwest Europe. German fighter units faced increasing sortie rates, longer patrol times, and rising attrition. Fuel allocations tightened. Replacement pilot training compressed. The knowledge gained from captured aircraft evaluation existed within a strategic context of declining resources. An instructor's log from a fighter school notes the smell of hot brake pads after a training sortie. He recorded fatigue among students, shortened rest periods, accelerated syllabi, pressure to push pilots through qualification faster. The understanding of enemy capabilities improved, but the broader trajectory of the air war moved against the Luftwaffe. Still, the captured Spitfire's data served its purpose. Pilots learned what to expect. Tactics adapted. The margin between survival and loss in aerial combat often came down to seconds, the moment of hesitation, the misjudged turn, the assumption proven false. Eliminating surprise saved lives on both sides by making engagements more predictable, if not less deadly. The file for this period closes with a maintenance note from the test facility. Aircraft serviceable, available for demonstration flights. Below it, a fuel allocation notice limits non-essential flights. The contradiction stood unresolved. By early 1944, German fighter units in Italy and France operated under increasing pressure. Allied numerical superiority manifested in continuous patrols, layered coverage, and coordinated sweeps. Luftwaffe Geschwader staff adapted tactics based on accumulated intelligence, including data from captured aircraft evaluations, unit diaries from Jagdgeschwader 2, and Jagdgeschwader 27 recorded tactical adjustments during the first quarter of 1944. Engagement protocols emphasized altitude selection for initial interception, using energy advantages to offset Spitfire maneuverability. Recommended procedures included boom and zoom attacks, diving passes followed by climbing disengagement, rather than sustained horizontal turning engagements, where the Spitfire's lower wing loading provided advantage. Reports from Oberleutnant Siegfried Lemke of EJG-2, who claimed multiple Spitfire victories during this period, reference pre-briefings that included comparative performance data. Pilots discussed approach angles, closure rates, and breakaway timing. The knowledge did not guarantee success, but it structured decision-making under stress. Weather over the Western Front remained variable through early 1944. Scattered cloud layers, haze reducing visibility, occasional icing conditions at altitude. German pilots reported difficulty maintaining formation integrity in poor visibility. Radar queue delays between ground controllers and airborne fighters complicated interception geometry. Fuel shortages, limited patrol duration, forcing early returns or reduced combat persistence. A Staffelkapitan signed a unit readiness report one February morning after a night spent on a canvas cot in a makeshift billet. His handwriting shows fatigue, irregular lines, abbreviations where full words should appear. He noted serviceable aircraft counts, pilot availability, and fuel state. The numbers told their own story. Fewer aircraft ready than the previous week, more pilots grounded for rest, fuel allocation reduced by 10%. Training insights on Spitfire performance existed, documented and disseminated, yet operational reality constrained exploitation. Knowledge of how to engage a Spitfire mattered less when fuel shortages prevented launching enough fighters, or when attrition eroded experienced leadership. Faster than replacement training could compensate. Staff summaries from early 1944 measured engagement outcomes while noting systemic constraints. Interception success rates declined despite improved tactical understanding. The problem lay not in knowledge, but in capacity. Too few aircraft, insufficient fuel, inadequate pilot training time, and overwhelming Allied numerical advantage. German fighter control centers operated under continuous stress. A controller's duty log describes the steady flow of reports, incoming raid warnings, vector assignments, status updates, and the growing mismatch between threats and available responses. He wrote of stale air in the control room, the tick of a wall clock, and silence on radio frequencies that had carried familiar voices hours earlier. The captured Spitfire's contribution to tactical doctrine remained valid in principle. The data informed decisions. But wars are not won by knowledge alone. Logistics, production, and trained manpower determine outcomes. By mid-1944, German deficiencies in all three domains overshadowed tactical refinements derived from test programs. On 6 June 1944, Allied forces landed on the Normandy coast, supported by comprehensive air superiority. German fighter units in France recorded severe operational strain. Luftwaffe command logs note inadequate sortie generation, limited fuel reserves, and continuous harassment of forward airfields. Allied air plans for D-Day allocated over 5,000 fighter sorties to cover the invasion fleet and beachhead. German records document fewer than 300 fighter sorties flown against the landings during the first day. The numerical disparity reflected accumulated strategic failures, production shortfalls, fuel scarcity, pilot attrition, and infrastructure degradation from sustained Allied bombing campaigns. Fighter control centers issued more intercept vectors than available aircraft could fulfill. A German controller's log records the pressure, constant telephone activity, overlapping raid warnings, insufficient fighters to assign. He noted the smell of cigarette smoke, strong coffee in chipped mugs, and the steady hum of plotting table activity. Instructions went out. Acknowledgements came back fewer than missions assigned. Training benefits derived from captured aircraft evaluation, understanding Spitfire performance, anticipating maneuvers, existed within this context of overwhelming disadvantage. Tactical knowledge could not substitute for absent aircraft or empty fuel tanks. German pilots engaged when circumstances allowed, using recommended techniques, but mission completion rates dropped steadily. Luftwaffe operational reports from June through August 1944 document rising losses and declining serviceability. Airfields faced repeated attacks, supply lines strained under interdiction campaigns, replacement aircraft arrived more slowly than losses accumulated. Pilot training standards compressed further, new arrivals reached units with fewer flight hours and less gunnery practice than predecessors. Yet the DB Spitfire continued flying test missions from Echterdingen, far from the Normandy battlefield. Its test program persisted through mid-1944, generating data on handling refinements and performance margins. Factory logs recorded routine maintenance, magneto inspections, coolant system checks, propeller servicing, alongside notations of increasing air raid alerts. A mechanic's diary entry from July 1944 mentions folding a cleaning rag into a breast pocket, a photograph of his family tucked behind an instrument panel screw. He listened to distant engine sounds, Allied bombers at altitude, heard air raid sirens, and looked once at the tail code CJ+Y before moving toward shelter. The strategic situation rendered test program outputs increasingly irrelevant. Data on climb rates and turning performance could not alter fuel production, factory capacity, or the overwhelming Allied material advantage. The knowledge existed, documented and preserved, but the war's outcome no longer depended on understanding enemy aircraft characteristics. Still, the testing continued as long as the facility functioned. Engineers and pilots followed procedures because methodology demanded completion. Each flight added data points. Each report updated performance charts. The work persisted, even as its strategic utility diminished towards zero. Between July and mid-August 1944, test operations at Echterdingen maintained routine despite increasing disruption. Mission planning for the U.S. 8th Air Force identified Stuttgart area airfields and industrial facilities as priority targets. Bomber formations struck repeatedly through the summer, degrading infrastructure and destroying aircraft on the ground. Echterdingen's test logs recorded flights through early August. The DB Spitfire remained airworthy and popular among pilots for its handling qualities. One pilot's note described visibility over the nose and easy rotation on takeoff. The aircraft felt responsive, control harmony well sorted after 2 years of modifications and refinement. Ground crews performed scheduled maintenance between flights. Workshop cards listed routine tasks, engine oil changes at prescribed intervals, propeller blade inspections for nicks or cracks, coolant system pressure checks, electrical connection verification. A mechanic noted the smell of aviation gasoline, the metallic tang of hot engine oil, and the echo of tools in the hangar. Air raid alerts increased in frequency through late July and early August. Luftwaffe airfield defense relied on dispersal and camouflage. Heavy anti-aircraft batteries ringed key facilities. Yet Allied air superiority rendered these measures insufficient. Reconnaissance flights provided targeting updates. Bomber formations struck with precision when weather permitted. On 14 August 1944, mission orders placed Echterdingen among primary targets for the 8th Air Force. Mission records for the 384th Bombardment Group list the airfield as target designation for Mission 180. The group formed part of a larger strike package hitting Stuttgart area installations. The attack occurred in daylight under clear conditions. Bombing runs targeted hangars, fuel storage, and parked aircraft. Damage assessments recorded multiple hits across the facility. Ground personnel sheltered during the raid. One fitter lay prone near a revetment, ears ringing from explosions, dust coating his throat. Post-strike inventory listed destroyed aircraft, Ju-52 transports, several Bf-109 variants including the unique Bf-109H V1 high-altitude prototype, an FW-190 V-16 experimental aircraft, an Me-410, and the Spitfire testbed coded CJ+Z. Factory references confirm EN-830 wrecked beyond repair, later scrapped at nearby Böblingen. The mechanic who had maintained the aircraft returned after the all-clear. He retrieved what paperwork remained from a dented filing cabinet, graphite smearing his fingers, the smell of wet plaster from damaged walls. He wrote 2 sentences in the maintenance log, then stopped. The page showed a singed corner. With the testbed destroyed, the accumulated knowledge reverted to paper form, reports, charts, pilot notes, engineering summaries. The physical platform, the aircraft itself, no longer existed. The data remained, preserved in files destined for archives. Allied strategic bombing through late 1944 systematically degraded German aviation infrastructure. 8th Air Force and RAF Bomber Command struck oil refineries, synthetic fuel plants, aircraft factories, and airfields. Production rates declined. Fuel availability collapsed. Pilot training standards dropped further as aviation gasoline allocations prioritized operational units over schools. With the DB Spitfire destroyed, Daimler-Benz test programs shifted to remaining assets. Engineering files and pilot reports represented the only surviving records of the 2-year evaluation. These documents entered broader collections of captured aircraft data compiled by RLM technical departments. German fighter strength on all fronts declined through autumn 1944. Operational units reported chronic fuel shortages, limiting sortie generation. Replacement aircraft arrived slowly, attrition outpaced deliveries, pilot quality suffered as training syllabi compressed and flight hours decreased. The Luftwaffe's institutional capacity eroded under cumulative pressure. On 1 January 1945, the Luftwaffe launched Operation Bodenplatte, a massed attack on Allied airfields in Belgium and the Netherlands. The operation aimed to destroy Allied aircraft on the ground and disrupt air operations supporting ground forces. German formations achieved tactical surprise at several targets, claiming significant Allied losses, yet German losses proved unsustainable. Jagdgeschwader 77, participating in attacks on Antwerp-Deurne, lost 11 Bf-109s, with 6 pilots killed and 5 captured. Across all participating units, German losses totaled approximately 300 aircraft and over 200 pilots. The Luftwaffe gained temporary disruption but sacrificed experienced pilots and irreplaceable aircraft in the process. Operational records show that despite tactical adjustments informed by captured aircraft data, including understanding of Allied fighter performance, strategic deficits overwhelmed doctrinal refinements. Knowledge of how to engage a Spitfire mattered less when fuel shortages prevented sustained operations or when numerical inferiority forced unfavorable engagement conditions. By early 1945, German fighter strength defending the Reich numbered fewer than 1,300 piston-engine aircraft. Allied bomber streams operated with fighter escort deep into German airspace. Interception attempts faced overwhelming odds. The accumulated intelligence from programs like the EN-830 evaluation existed in files but could not reverse material collapse. Hauptmann Siegfried Freytag of JG-77, who participated in Bodenplatte, later claimed his 102nd victory on 23rd of March 1945 near Duisburg, a Spitfire shot down during defensive operations over the Ruhr. His claim reflects individual skill and surviving tactical knowledge, yet individual victories no longer influenced strategic outcomes. The air war's trajectory had been determined by production capacity, fuel availability, and pilot training rates, domains where the Allies held decisive advantage. The captured Spitfire's legacy persisted in archives. Test reports documenting climb rates, service ceilings, handling qualities. The data informed understanding but did not alter the war's conclusion. After 14th August 1944, the physical airframe of EN-830 ceased to exist. Factory scrap records list components removed from the wrecked testbed at Böblingen. Usable instruments went to salvage pools. Damaged structure went to recycling. The aircraft's operational life ended with the bombing raid. Its documentary life continued through preserved files. Daimler-Benz engineering departments retained test reports and pilot evaluations. These documents entered corporate archives alongside development records for DB 600 series engines and related projects. RLM technical offices consolidated captured aircraft data from multiple sources, preparing summaries for remaining operational units and training facilities. The reports noted the DB-powered Spitfire's performance characteristics: climb rate near 21 meters per second in unarmed configuration, service ceiling exceeding 12,000 meters, favorable ground handling compared to BF-109G, superior pilot visibility during taxi and approach. Engineers emphasized that direct comparisons required accounting for weight differences and armament removal. German test pilot memoirs written after the war preserved additional observations. One described the Spitfire as a mid-wing monoplane with an aerodynamically faultless fuselage, noting the clean lines and efficient structure. Another recalled the visibility advantages and control harmony. These personal accounts supplemented technical data with qualitative assessments. As the Reich collapsed through early 1945, preserving documentation became difficult. Allied advances overran facilities, evacuation orders scattered personnel, bombing destroyed records. Some files survived through bureaucratic inertia. Filing cabinets moved to basements, folders transferred to secondary locations. Other records disappeared into confusion. Allied technical intelligence teams entered Germany in the war's final months, tasked with locating and securing Axis technical documents. Air Historical Branch personnel, working with US counterparts, identified priority targets, aircraft development records, engine test data, captured equipment evaluations, operational reports. The DB Spitfire file fell within their scope. British and American teams interviewed surviving German engineers and test pilots. Translators worked through captured documents, preparing English language summaries for technical analysts and historians. The process stabilized information that otherwise might have been lost or distorted by rumor. One translator working in a quiet office in occupied Germany underlined the phrase "vergleichende Erprobung," comparative testing, in a Daimler-Benz report. Rain tapped on the window. The room smelled of ink and damp paper. He noted the methodical nature of German test procedures, the careful documentation, the systematic approach to evaluation. These characteristics made reconstruction of programs like EN-830's conversion feasible years later. The knowledge persisted. Engine performance data, airframe characteristics, handling qualities, comparative assessments. Engineers on both sides learned from the exercise. Design thinking incorporated insights on wing loading, visibility, control response, and systems integration. The lessons migrated across national boundaries, embedded in post-war fighter development. Through late 1944 and into 1945, Allied technical intelligence operations expanded across occupied territories. Teams catalogued German aircraft, engines, and weapons, documenting technical achievements and innovations. Captured documents received systematic processing, translation, indexing, cross-referencing, archival storage. The Air Historical Branch coordinated British efforts, working alongside US Army Air Force's technical intelligence units. Their mandate included comprehensive documentation of Luftwaffe operations, organization, and equipment. German test reports, operational records, and development files received priority attention. Personnel interviewed former Luftwaffe officers and engineers. Günther Rall, a decorated fighter ace credited with over 275 victories, provided perspectives on captured aircraft evaluation programs. He described Rechlin's systematic approach and the operational value of understanding enemy equipment. His testimony entered formal intelligence summaries alongside documentary evidence. Declassified files from Erprobungsstelle Rechlin listed captured Allied aircraft evaluated during the war. Spitfire variants, P-51 Mustangs, P-47 Thunderbolts, British bombers, Soviet types. Each entry recorded arrival date, test program outline, and disposition. EN 830 appeared among these records with notation of transfer to Daimler-Benz and subsequent loss in August 1944. Technical reports compared engine performance across national programs. German engineers had achieved high specific power outputs from DB600 series engines through direct fuel injection, supercharging refinement, and metallurgical advances. Allied engineers studied these methods, extracting lessons for post-war development. The DB605A installed in EN 830 represented one data point in broader engine technology analysis. Post-war aviation engineering incorporated insights from wartime testing programs. Understanding how different airframes responded to engine changes, weight modifications, and systems integration informed jet-age fighter design. The methodologies refined during programs like EN 830's conversion, systematic testing, controlled comparison, documented evaluation became standard practice. A surviving test pilot interviewed years later recalled the DB-powered Spitfire's handling with quiet precision. He described the view over the nose during taxi, the light control forces, the smooth power delivery. The aircraft had impressed him. He spoke in measured tones, the room quiet enough to hear pages turn as an interviewer took notes. The human cost remained documented. Bernhard Scheidhauer, the pilot who force-landed EN 830 on Jersey, had been executed by the Gestapo after the Great Escape. His name appeared on the list of 50 murdered officers. Post-war war crimes investigations recorded the circumstances, perpetrators, and chain of command. Justice proceedings addressed responsibility. Memorial plaques preserved memory. The aircraft itself existed now only through records and recollections. No wreckage survived for museums. The story persisted in files, photographs, and veteran accounts, fragments assembled by historians and archivists decades later. Knowledge had migrated from aluminum and steel into paper and memory, where it remained accessible to those who sought understanding. Bernhard Scheidhauer's service record documents his path from recruitment into the Free French Air Force through operational assignments with RAF squadrons. Born in 1921, he volunteered in 1940 after France's defeat. Training in Britain qualified him as a fighter pilot. By late 1942, he flew operationally with No. 131 Squadron. The forced landing on Jersey on 18 November 1942 made him a prisoner of war. German records note his transfer through interrogation facilities to permanent POW camps. By 1943, he resided at Stalag Luft III near Sagan, a camp housing Allied Air Force officers. The mass escape from Stalag Luft III on 24 to 25 March 1944 saw 76 officers break through a tunnel known as Harry. German security forces recaptured all but 3 within days. Hitler ordered execution of escapees as an example. The Gestapo murdered 50 officers, including Scheidhauer. Records list his death date as 29th of March 1944. British investigations after the war documented the killings as war crimes. Witnesses testified. Gestapo personnel faced prosecution. Responsibility chains extended through Nazi security apparatus. Courts established guilt. Sentences followed. The legal record closed with verdicts and executions of those responsible. Scheidhauer's name appears on memorials in Jersey and at RAF stations where he served. Family members received notification of his death through official channels in 1944. Confirmation of circumstances came later. His photograph shows a young man in flight gear, expression serious, eyes forward. The image survives in archives and memorial displays. The aircraft he flew, EN 830, entered German hands intact, underwent conversion, flew test missions for 2 years and was destroyed in a bombing raid. Its technical contribution outlasted its physical existence, yet the human cost attached to that single aircraft extended beyond one forced landing. A pilot captured, imprisoned, murdered. RAF casualty records list thousands of airmen lost during the war. Each name represents individual circumstances, decisions, and outcomes. Scheidhauer's case connects to the broader story of Allied air crews operating over occupied Europe, the risks of combat flying, and the consequences of capture. The Jersey Memorial stands near the coast, salt air corroding metal plaques slowly, traffic passing on nearby roads. Visitors pause, read names, move on. The inscription lists dates without adjectives: birth, enlistment, operations, death. The facts suffice. The stone endures longer than memory among those who never knew him. Historians assembling the account of EN 830's capture and conversion encounter his name early in the file. They note his fate, record it, and continue tracing the aircraft's technical story. Both threads, human and mechanical, interweave through the documentary record, inseparable in archives even as they diverged in 1942. Post-war aviation histories compiled from Allied technical intelligence files, German archival materials, and veteran testimonies document EN 830's technical evaluation with precision. The DB-605A installation in a Spitfire Mk Vb airframe represented a unique experiment combining British aerodynamic design with German engine technology. Performance figures recorded during test flights showed advantages attributable to the engine change and weight reduction. Climb rate near 21 meters per second compared favorably to both standard Spitfire Mk Vb with Merlin 45 and Bf 109G with DB 605A. Service ceiling exceeded 12,000 meters, approaching 13,000 meters under optimal conditions. Ground handling benefited from the Spitfire's wide landing gear and good forward visibility. German test pilot reports emphasized handling qualities. Control harmony, light stick forces, and predictable responses made the aircraft pleasant to fly. The DB-605A's direct fuel injection eliminated carburetor limitations during negative G maneuvers. Cockpit visibility exceeded Bf 109G standards significantly. These qualitative assessments complemented quantitative performance data. Yet the comparison carried limitations. The test aircraft flew without armament, reducing weight by approximately 300 kilograms. Combat-loaded Spitfires would show reduced performance. Additionally, the DB-605A installation required modification to cooling systems and exhaust routing, introducing compromises. Radiator overheating limited sustained high-power operations, constraining top-speed measurements. Strategic conclusions emerge from the complete record. German engineers demonstrated technical competence in adapting foreign designs. Test procedures followed rigorous methodology. Data collection met professional standards, yet these capabilities existed within a losing strategic position. Superior understanding of enemy aircraft characteristics could not compensate for fuel shortages, production deficits, or pilot attrition. Allied production figures dwarfed German output across 1943-1945, Spitfire variants numbered over 20,000 examples produced. Total Allied fighter production exceeded 100,000 aircraft. German fighter production, though substantial, could not match Allied rates while simultaneously defending against strategic bombing, supporting ground forces, and replacing losses. The episode's meaning resides in documented facts. 1 captured aircraft, systematic evaluation over 2 years, data generation informing tactical doctrine, destruction in an Allied bombing raid, preservation of knowledge through archived records, design lessons migrated across post-war fighter programs, methodologies refined during wartime testing, established standards for future evaluations. An engineer at Daimler-Benz later wrote that the airframe had a fast and racy look. The visibility on the ground was better than a Bf-109G. His observation, preserved in company archives, captures technical appreciation divorced from national allegiance. The aircraft represented engineering achievement. Markings indicated origin but did not define merit. The file closes with scrap records from Böblingen and Allied technical intelligence summaries. The machine lies destroyed. The knowledge it generated persists. Numbers outlive aluminum. Climb rates, ceiling figures, weight data, performance curves. The story ends not with a battle, but with archives, silent, indexed, available to those who seek understanding.